Let's not get canceled.
Oh no!
We got a shit ton of people.
Let's see here.
That is one mammoth meatball. And by mammoth, we don't just mean big.
Cities across America force law-abiding citizens into curfew as rioters and looters burn and smash. Protesters watch their cause undermined by violent hangers-on.
But I'm literally looking at my neighbors now going, I'm ready to hang them up, gut them and skin them and chop them up. You know what? I'm ready. My daughters aren't starving to death. I'll eat my neighbors. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay.
Written. Glenn Beck will have his own chapter as possibly the greatest synthesizer of big ideas ever to appear on camera.
There are dozens of videos and photos of Obama having flies land on him indoors at all times of year, and he'll be next to 100 people and no one has flies on him.
Does anyone have a question for Santa Claus?
Santa, do you have to wear a mask?
When I'm in my workshop with all my elves, we all are masked up and social distancing.
The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Guns up, giddy up. Welcome to Fair to Stop Last Call, the show that gives you something else to talk about this weekend. Other than dead babies and domestic violence. That's right, this is the show that keeps our first responders well-rounded. We know you're not watching the mainstream news, and we don't blame you. It's failing miserably. It's full of lies, propaganda. And that's where we come in, because you can't just not know what's going on. That's not an excuse. G.I. Joe taught us in the early 90s that knowing is half the battle, baby. So you got to know. And we know that you're not going to watch mainstream media. We get that. We understand that. We were first responders ourselves. We're both former police officers. And that's why we're going through the news, paying our dues to inform you in a way that first responders want to hear about it. Fair Stop Channel brings you 5 shows a week, giving you all the cop news with comedian and former police officer Jay Durrell. We have True Crime Tuesday nights with all your true crime updates and a true crime story with Andrea Up Late. Wednesdays is Last Call with myself and Deadleg Media. Josh from Deadleg Media. And then on Thursdays, we have Com Center with dispatchers John and dispatcher, former police detective Drew Breezy. And Friday, of course, is our flagship show, our case breakdowns. Guys, listen, we have been growing exponentially. Our Patreon is crushing. Our YouTube is crushing. We just built a brand new studio that's ours. This is the first time that we will have officially our own studio that we don't pay rent on, and hopefully to be moved into that come on Monday. So that's going to be really exciting. So it'll be the last time you see this set behind me for the YouTube viewers. But it's also going to allow us a lot more creative space to work on our Patreon. We have 4 sets that are inside the one studio. So lots of different stuff. And if you want to support the show, you can go to our Patreon, become a member. You can become a paid YouTube member. Today's show only goes out to our paid YouTube members on video, but then we'll drop to audio for free on Thursdays to our podcast. Today's show is brought to you by ghostbed.com/Wolfpack. Mother's Day is right around the corner. It's this weekend. It's not too late to get your mother and your mommy a little Mother's Day gift. Get them the gift that keeps on giving. Get your mother a ghost bed pillow, and get your mommy, the woman that you're going to lay down tonight, get her a ghost bed mattress with the adjustable base. The adjustable base can allow for all sorts of mommy's day activities. And of course, your mother will enjoy a good ghost bed pillow. Go to ghostbed.com/Wolfpack. And we've got a lot of news to you. I think we've officially turned into a Dave Chappelle episode.
This entire episode could be brought to you by Dave Chappelle.
It could be brought to you by Dave Chappelle. I woke up this morning and thought to myself, if there are alternate universes, there's an alternate reality and we're living in it I believe that we are living in a Dave Chappelle episode because every single headline from today's show was, in fact, a Dave Chappelle episode. Starting off today, we will be covering reparations. If you remember the Dave Chappelle episode where he had a reparations episode, getting that money. We've got Kamala Harris, the AI czar, who's going to be selling us on all the good AR. That reminds me of Popular Copy, the Pop Copy episode where Dave Chappelle is selling technology and computers and printers, even though he has no idea anything about printers or copiers, and just filling the customers' heads full of disappointment, which is how I think that story is going to play out. We've got, what else do we've got? We got a giant penis. There's a lot of penis episodes. There was a lot of there was actually an episode where a black man dressed in dominatrix outfits goes out and mows yards. That was a Dave Chappelle episode. What else do we have for tonight? We got we got Clayton Bigsby, the white supremacist, the black white supremacist, because we are going to be covering a Mexican white supremacist that was the mass shooter in Texas. And we're going to break down, can you be a Mexican white supremacist? I didn't know this before the show, but spoiler alert, yes, you can in fact be a Mexican white supremacist because, we'll get to it. I don't want to spoil it too much, but yes, the answer is yes. Josh, before I jump down into my various news articles that we have to cover today, what do you have? Do you have anything for us?
There's one thing that I've been watching, and week by week, more and more stuff has been coming out, and not everybody's been talking about it, and it's probably a good reason why. They got caught in lies. Remember that letter that 51 intelligence agencies put out? They signed off and said that the laptop from Hunter Biden was for sure Russian disinformation.
Right.
Well, we know who authored it. We know who told who to author it. So we're getting back to find out the who and the what, and it's finding out. It sounded like the CIA is involved with election interference.
Oh, shocker. Matter of fact, last night's true crime episode, which was the craziest true crime episode I've ever heard. It was The Boys on the Tracks. And oh my God, I felt, even last night when I went home, I now know what it means to be woke after that out, because that case shows you how corrupt, the fact that it ties back to the Clintons so easily as well, absolutely insane. I've always kind of half jokingly jumped on the Hillary train, half joking. But after that episode, I'm like, oh, I get it. It's really not a joke at all. Like, that's 100% real.
I think there's a website that was tracking the list of people that have had questionable deaths that have had an association with the Clintons. Wow. The only thing I could say is I'm glad that I didn't know them any better.
Yeah. So tell me about this news that you found out about the CIA. What did you find out? Where did you find out? What's your source? What do we got?
This is coming from the New York Post, and I want to make sure that I'm reading directly from the New York Post because of what's been put out. It was last year or a couple years ago, you had the Hunter Biden laptop come out. And as soon as it came out, Twitter right away said, no, that we can't put this out. And they had it was part of their hack materials policy, but other hack materials stuff there was a clear concerted effort to make sure that this information did not get out to the public.
All right.
Now we're finding out who did what and when. We're finding on the other side of things with the House Judiciary Committee that the former CIA director, Michael Moore, testified under oath that he drafted the letter, and the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, was the person who told him what to do. At the time, Anthony served as the campaign advisor to the Biden campaign. So all this, we go down for the timing of when all this came out, all this is going down in timing right before the debate comes out. So there's emails that have been leaked to the Judiciary Committee that have these emails in there like, hey, not only can we get other people to sign off on this, even though we know it's complete BS, we're going to try to get this signed off and pushed out before the debate. And then in October, Biden used this in his debate talking points. So this is all at what point does the American people go, hey, our government circumvented itself to make sure that people didn't hear? Like, that's.
Well, I think we're doing it right now as well, if I'm not mistaken, with the debates currently, where we're just not going to do them.
We're just not going to do them. So now
we're just going to circumvent all the questions that the American people have by just not holding a debate.
And we're not, and not like when you go to search for this stuff here, here's the other thing. You search the Brennan Biden letter to try to find the specifics of it. And Google has this fun thing when you try to search some topics that it doesn't like you searching, it'll start suppressing stuff. Not only that, I'll put these little headlines up where this topic is changing so frequently, where they're trying to make sure that the information that you do see is what they have curated. So
right,
even
they're trying to retard all the information so that you're left with more questions than you have with answers.
Because then the only information that starts to get out is where we start, like, this questioning where the information comes from starts to trickle down into like our Mexican white supremacists, where this information came from. Like, it's questionable where the footing is, but we're going to go run with it so hard. But it's scary.
Well, they saw how that worked with the Breonna Taylor case. I mean, they convinced a mass majority of the population, even with cops that I talked to, they still think Breonna Taylor was killed in her bed asleep while working as an EMS worker, not an EMT worker, but an EMS worker. So, it works, right? Like, if we just put out the information and we put it out with passion and with emotions, and we act like, we put it out with the confidence and the bravado that it's true, the American people will fall for it. And then they'll never go back to fact check it or care if you recant what you had said previously.
And when they're there's more that's coming out literally like minutes before we went live. I texted you that list of the judiciary letter. In that letter, there's a 36-page letter that came out this morning about money ties and where money is getting funneled through the Bidens and their ties when he was vice president and all these different companies that he's had. And even in this letter, they specifically outlined some talking points where they've asked the Biden administration directly about a specific topic with a specific question, and they have completely ignored it, or they just won't answer.
Yeah, they won't, like the one about Hunter Biden making $82,000 a month in the UK and Burisma deal, and Joe Biden in that famous clip where he says, "I told him right now that, like, if you don't fire whoever the guy was, you can
the prosecutor guy,
right? The prosecutor, then they wouldn't get any more money." And so they fired the prosecutor, and it all goes back to, well, your son's making $82,000 a month, and he has no qualifications to be making that kind of money with Burisma or any of that stuff. And you file the one prosecutor that's looking into corruption and everything else with Ukraine. And then soon as, Joe Biden becomes president, he starts a war in Ukraine, or Russia starts a war in Ukraine, or I'm not even sure who started that war in Ukraine, if it was us or Russia. But I do find it very odd that that leading up to his presidential election, there were so many ties to the Biden family and Ukraine. But is that the only story you have for us? You got something?
Yeah, that's
else?
the other one that I'm kind of working on, because it's ongoing. Literally, it's more came out this morning just before we went live. So that's one that we're gonna stay on top of.
And it's funny because it's like, as we bring stories throughout the week and we give it a whole week, we kind of see those stories go full circle, like this next story, which was, if you remember last week, we were talking about Google's AI, the king of AI, the godfather of AI, I believe is what the article had deemed him, resigned saying that AI was getting too powerful and that people weren't putting enough things in place to protect us. And then we find out almost later that day, after our episode aired, we find out later that day that Kamala Harris gets appointed as the AI czar, according to the official White House documents. The AI czar, which I didn't know we had czars in America.
We have the misinformation czar. They tried to make a misinformation czar not too long ago. Like,
right.
I don't know what this fascination with czars is.
Yeah. Tsar, man, it sounds very Russian to me, right? Like, weren't the Russians the one that had czars?
That sounds like, very red. Sounds like Russia or like Germany in the 40s type talk.
Right? It's weird,
Czar's
isn't it?
Russian for communist.
Like anytime I've ever heard the word czar was usually in a James Bond movie, and it was the bad guy. It was somehow implicated as a bad person, a czar.
And they're always named Hans.
You've got it again, Mr. Bond. But so the fact that we're just throwing the word czar around is very odd to me. But it's funny that Kamala Harris gets appointed as the AI czar, and the godfather of AI is like, fuck it, I'm out. And I would be offended too, because I feel like Kamala Harris, and listen, poor Kamala Harris, she's had a hard go at it. I mean, she's had an immense amount of staffers who have resigned under her. She's been labeled as a bully from other coworkers. She has the lowest approval rating of all time. She's got a worse approval rating than Dick Cheney. He shot a dude in the face. She is the butt of many jokes. But, I want to read a quote. This is a quote from one of her staff workers. It says, with Kamala, you have to put up with a constant amount of soul-destroying criticisms and also her own lack of confidence, the former staffer said. So you're constantly sort of propping up a bully, and it's not really clear why. And you could see this, like in her speeches, her interviews, they're all a disaster. But anyway, she's now the czar. I like how Elon Musk put it, where he said that I'm glad that we have somebody in charge of AI that couldn't even reset a router if she had to.
Like, when she like patronizing people about the color of school buses a couple of months ago too? Like,
oh yeah,
I can't think of a more unqualified person to be in charge.
Well, she's because she started off with her campaign started off with a lot of like momentum, and there was a lot of people that were pumped about her coming in, and then it really quickly, after all the momentum was gone from like her initial like Kamala Harris, first black female, as soon as like she started interviews and then her debates and everything like that, she instantly went down. And it's because the whole world can see that she's an idiot. She's not. And I feel bad because I wouldn't be able to do her job any better. I wouldn't. That would be like putting Kamala Harris in charge as the vice president is about as dumb as putting me in charge of that.
But
would
we're
be
not running for the presidency, though.
Is less qualified to do that job as she is. But I don't have an annoying laugh.
Yeah, you're not trying to be the czar of AI. You're trying to be the czar of podcast networks. Big difference.
And I'm not even trying to be a czar of podcast networks. I'm just literally trying to bring something that the first responders didn't have, and that was a voice, right? Because everybody was hating on first responders when we started the show, and still all the misinformation that goes into law enforcement, how it affects law enforcement and firefighters and state troopers and just everything else, man. There was just nothing else for us to do. Even true crime had this very left-wing liberal take on it. And that made it no fun to listen to because, they always tried to paint the police officers in all the true crime cases as some kind of Barney Fife, ignoramus who couldn't solve the crime, right? But they never go into the totality of the circumstances. That's why we started this channel, so that we could give you something to listen to from a police perspective, from the perspective of other officers who hear the news, who have done a little bit of research. And basically, I'm giving you talking points. I'm not trying to convince you or sway you one way or the other. I don't care if you love Kamala Harris. I doubt you do. I doubt very many people do. So I'm not afraid to throw her on the bus. It's like Lori Lightfoot. Not really afraid to crush on her because I'm not sure she has a lot of fans from the left or the right. I'm not trying to persuade you to be left or right. I could give two fucks. I think, I think we're a one-party system anyway at this point. All I'm trying to do is give you something to talk about so that when your neighbor brings up AI and the new AI czar, you've got some stuff to punch back at them with, or at least have something to carry on the conversation so you don't have to swiftly switch that conversation to a door you kicked in to some, drug user that you oppressed over the week and make everybody feel uncomfortable around the table. I mean, sometimes people are into those stories, but not all the time. So now you can talk about, about how stupid it is to appoint her. Now, listen, she was also appointed to take care of our borders. And that's become a disaster. Right now,
are you sure?
what is it, 700 million?
I think the number that I read was close to 700 million had come across
since Biden's been in office.
Yeah.
That's a shit ton of people, which I think you told me was more. That 700 million people coming into the United States is more than the Russians have come into Ukraine.
Yeah, there was. I was going to try to find the numbers specifically, but they had said the alleged number of combatants on the Russian side and the alleged number of combatants on the Ukrainian side. If you combine those two numbers, it's still less than the amount of people that are coming across our border every day.
I also found this is an interesting stat as I was reading about it. Is that do you know how much of the American population is actually black?
It's less than, I think it's like 7%. It's like between 7 or 12%, somewhere in there.
12%.
It's not. Yeah, it's not 12%. A lot.
12% of America are actually black people. And do you know how many the percentage of Hispanics there are in America?
Probably even less than that.
No, more.
Ooh.
There's more Hispanics in America than there are black people. 17%. I didn't know that. I did not know that. I would have guessed, like, honestly, as dumb as I am, I would have guessed 48% black. Like, I thought like half of America was black.
They had a big there's a big immigrant selection here in Colorado, and when they legalized weed some years ago, the cartels moved up because you could legally grow it here. So they would grow, they had their own grow houses and stuff. They'd grow it here and then ship it to Kansas or California or whatever you need. Because why try to get it across the border if you can just grow it here? Logistically, It'll save you time and money. You're not spending money on fuel for trucks to come across. So, yeah.
I mean, at what point I don't know. Like, that just seems odd to me that we have so many Hispanics and we're just allowing that to happen, and why so many people are so pro that. I'm not anti-Mexican by any means. I actually think that Mexican culture has one of the best work ethics ever.
You can't argue.
What I do have a problem with is that we're so okay with anybody of any kind of culture to just freely come into our country to kind of make it their own. Like, it seems like a little conquering to me. Like, it seems like Mexico is conquering the United States.
They have, you can't argue on one side that America is such this racist and we hate people. You can't argue on one hand that, and on the other hand say we're the greatest country on earth while these people are trying to, like, you can't argue both sides of that same thing. And at the other thing, everybody that has come here for a better future and has done it legally, come through the immigrant, like, it shits all over that process. It shits all over everything that they've done. Because it tells me, why do I want to go through the legal process if I can go through it illegally and get done 10 times as fast, and I'll get stuff. I won't have to pay because if you want to pay to go through your citizenship, you have to pay. There's a lot of money.
Truly racist. If cops were truly racist, they would go to the Mexican fairs, the Mexican, what do you call those? The flea markets. We have 2 Mexican flea markets near where I live, and every Sunday it is insanity. It's like little Tijuana right here in North Carolina. Thousands and thousands. None of them speak English. None of them have proper identification. None of them have, like, all their car tags are like expired. And you could tell that most of their vehicles haven't even been inspected, which in North Carolina, inspection world, if we were truly racist, if cops were truly racist and biased, they would just park outside and run tags all day long. They would just walk through and serve warrants all day long, because it would be like shooting fish in the barrel. The thing is that we're so not racist that we don't care. We just allow that we're like, no, we're not going to fuck with them on Sunday at a flea market, even though we could write, we could meet 10 years worth of quotas. If quotas were a thing, we could get 10 years worth of quotas in one Sunday afternoon at the Mexican fair. But we don't do that. Nobody does that because we're not assholes. Because we're not inherently systemically racist. You know what I mean? We're humans, and we see other humans enjoying what we have, and that's freedom in the United States, and we allow that to happen. But people in the mainstream media would like to think that we're no nonsense when it comes to this. I just think that, reasonably speaking, open borders is a terrible idea. It's just not safe.
Well, you could do you can have everything with the greatest intentions, but you have to understand that we live in a world where people, like, not everybody has the greatest intentions. We don't live in this fairy tale land. Like, there are people that want to do you harm. There are people that will take whatever you have from you, and they'll take it from you.
As we saw in last night's true crime episode, the boys on the tracks.
You're gonna have like, you don't think that there are other like terrorist organizations. Like, we just forget about all of the terrorist organizations that we've pissed off, or everything that we've done in Afghanistan. Like, we just forget about all that. You don't think that you can come through Mexico and just walk right across the border now? Why do I have to try to go through Dulles or JFK Airport when I can just walk right across the border in Texas? Not only that, they're going to have a van waiting for me, busing me up to DC. Like,
busing me to Chicago.
Like, my wife is from China. Like, it delegitimizes everything that she's done. She's worked her ass off to be a citizen for this country. And for what? Like, you fought for this country. I fought for this country. We have veterans that are trying to get they're cutting veterans benefits. Like, people that have actually done something for this country, and now we're just going to just shit all over that. Like, yeah. I don't understand it. I mean, I do, but I don't.
Right. Well, understand it even less, because right now, the big news is that the reparations in California, and I think it was in 2020, Governor Newsom appointed a coalition, a group of people to look at reparations. And it's kind of come back now that they have drafted a final report, and Governor Newsom is not going to sign it because it's ridiculous.
I like, right before we got started, I did some quick math. Slavery was outlawed in 1865. The oldest person alive lived 122 years. If that person had been born, let's say, a couple weeks before slavery was outlawed, they would have died in 1987. So that's 35 years ago. So California is going to try to take money from people that never had anything to do with this and give it to people that had nothing. Like, you can, like, I guarantee that you can probably maybe go through descendants and you can say, oh, you can, but I'm not doubting that at all. But somebody living in California right now has never owned a slave.
Right.
Never.
And most likely might not even have had family members that were slaves. I remember there was one woman that was like speaking out just super against like American slavery and everything, only to come to find out that like her lineage comes from like England.
Like, not only that,
and like her like one of her grandparents like went from England to Africa and married like an African or something like so she was like super far removed from slavery, like as far away from slavery, and she's one of the ones that sits on this reparations task force. That's what it's called, by the way, not a coalition. It's a task force, which I think is very militaristic.
Like, really you're going to get $13,619 for each year of residency based on a 71-year life expectancy for healthcare disparities.
Well, yeah, here's some examples of the reparations that they proposed. And I do frankly think that they're pretty absurd, especially when we have like Irish people who were kind of shit on. We've got Japanese people. They're kind of, even though Japanese were the most horrific, that's one thing we don't talk about a lot in American history either, is how horrific the Japanese were in World War II. Arguably, they were more horrific than the Nazis.
There's the city that my wife is from. They have a museum from, I think it's the 716 project or whatever that project. It starts with the number 7, but it was the Japanese they just experimented on humans.
Yeah,
They
like crazy. Like they would take pregnant women and stick them out in the snow to see
watch
how
them-
long they froze before, like to see what froze first, the woman or the fetus.
Then they would like amputate, like they'd cut someone's arm off to see how long before, like it. You want to talk about like museums? It'll like that. I've been to the Holocaust Museum. I've been to this museum, and I'll say that this one I got a way more emotional response from walking through. Like,
yeah, because they did they did the Australian Death March. Did you see that in the museum where they walked these Australians to death and only 2 survived the walk and they executed them at the end of the walk? Could you imagine? And it was like thousands of Australians.
This entire like. It's incredible. Like I'll talk. Maybe I'll talk about my wife and see if she want to talk about it on Patreon for a little bit. It's the amount of people that this like. That's a lint that happened. There are people alive today. My wife's mother, my mother-in-law, she was alive when like she was young, but she was alive when this was going on. So we want to talk about things like slavery's been gone for a while, and you're going to have because the other thing that we were talking about before we went live is. It's going to cause this is going to cause a rippling effect. So SpaceX is pulled out of where they're not in California anymore. Tesla's not located in California anymore. California
bullshit like this. I mean, they're wanting 800. Let's see, what was it? $800 billion.
Where are you going to end
$100 billion to reparations?
And California is proposing they call it the wealth and exit tax. Is what it's called, and they want to be able to. They're going to try to start taxing wealthy people, even after you don't live in California anymore. So if you lived in California, and you're like, "Hey, I don't want my money going to this. I'm going to take it and go someplace else." California's like, "Well, yeah, you're still going to have to pay us even after you leave." Like how is any of like I'm going to take from you to give to somebody? Like, where is that legal? At what point in history did like this is like the problems that this is going to cause? Like you're going to get for mass incarceration and over policing. So how do you quantify that? What
right? Like, is it because you were you were arrested or somebody was arrested? So like this is where that 800 billion would go to is. That if you lived in a racially homogenous neighborhood, you might just get $148,000. Locals who have lived in the state from 1971 to 2020 are eligible for compensation addressing the impact of over-policing and mass incarceration to the tune of $115,000
per year.
The biggest lump sum is reserved for Black Californians who can demonstrate experience in health disparities, presumably attributed to racist policies. For them, they can get $966,921. A Black senior citizen who has lived her whole life in the state and can claim to have been exposed to all the various harms raised in the report might be eligible for compensation upwards of 7 figures.
So the first question that I have is one, where is this money coming from?
And who has to pay for it? Like,
secondly,
my family came from Ireland. Like in like 1901, 1911. Like we didn't have any slaves. Tansies never owned any slaves. So would I have to pay that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
because you're gonna have people. You're gonna end up have people going, yeah, I'm not paying my taxes this year.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people doing that right now too.
Well, they just hired all those IRS agents. Like if you don't think that there's some like overarching like, hey, we're gonna do this today and it's not gonna mean anything, but 6 months down the road, this is gonna mean something. So we're not gonna the IRS agents mean nothing today.
Yeah, because I'm not going to say like who would pay that. I'm telling you right now, if I lived in California, when I would move, right? Like there's no way I am paying somebody for over policing or whatever. Like, how about we charge you for over for like high amounts of crime and domestic violence? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, over, and everybody, like every race of every culture fucks up, right? Like there's going to be bad police, but there's a lot of bad black people too. There's a lot of bad white people, a lot of bad Hispanics, there's a lot of bad Asians. And we just talked about Japan and all the heinous things he's done. We haven't even talked about the heinous shit the French has done for many years. Where do you think the majority of the slaves that landed in America came from? They came from the French and the French-owned islands. Like we bought and paid for them. But we paid the French for those slaves. You know what I'm saying?
Well, not only that,
I'm not paying reparations to anybody except maybe Indians. The Indians are the only one I can really see that we kind of owe, not even kind of, we owe Native Americans some shit.
We're the only, so I'll point, not that I'm discounting that, but and I'm not saying that we came over and just obliterate, because that's exactly what happened. But at what point in history did any other country come in and take something over and they go, okay, well, my bad.
Right.
We're the
like
United
Germany.
States. Like, yeah, they conquered what they did. And they're like, oh yeah, this is ours now.
Yeah. Cause like what the Germany that was conquered by the Romans, right?
Like even before, like if you want to go back and like, we can go back and you can argue like, oh, well, who's the first of this? Well, if you really want to argue like back to back, like who are like, we were not alive for any of this shit.
Yeah.
We are arguing over things.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. I mean,
we have no control over. We don't have a time machine. Like we're arguing over stuff to just argue over stuff.
And I feel like Tactical Dude in the comments says that we do need to give Native Americans some stuff back. But yeah, it's like do we have a Native Americans Day? Do we have Indians Day? I guess I call it Indigenous People Day. That's not celebrated.
Well, that was Columbus Day that they're now making Indigenous Peoples Day.
But I mean, like you'd think that they'd have like an Indian Day where we learn more about Indian culture. That's what I'm saying. Like these days that they have, aside from like St. Patty's Day, if we were really smart and the education system was half a shit, that would be a day to learn about the culture of said people, right? So on St. Patty's Day, in school, you'd have St. Patrick's Day style cuisine. If it's Indians Day, maybe you have an Indian style cuisine, like where we eat Indian food. Black History Month, we eat black cuisine, black food, shrimp and grits, some fried chicken, some watermelon. I don't know why that's fucking racist to say that. I mean, shit, dude. What do white people like? You know what I mean? I'm telling you right now, fried chicken sounds way better than the shit that white people eat.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise. I mean, I don't know. It's like you could take the opportunity to learn about other cultures. And as far as reparations go, you could take all that money and invest it into something that would be useful, like better education, right? Because with better education, you don't have things happen like that. Crime rates go down when people are more educated, when people know how to finance their money. We don't educate. We educate in the public school system based on a check the blocks theory, but it doesn't really help, right? For a kid that wants to be an entrepreneur, some of the stuff that you're teaching them in a public school system, it doesn't really apply to that person. People who want to do certain things, athletics and things like that, the education system doesn't really benefit those people. It's a check the blocks type system. It doesn't meet anybody on a personal level. But, the fact that almost every single low income inner city school is only blocks away from McDonald's and it blocks away from a Walgreens where everything is the most expensive. And all the kids just go sit outside of a school at lunchtime of a high school and watch the massive amount of kids who flee to the local Walgreens, the local CVS, and the local McDonald's and the local Wendy's, whatever's across the street from their school. If we have a starvation problem, like we have kids that are going to McDonald's every day for lunch, every day.
Did you guys have special duty assigned for it?
What's that?
Did you guys have special duty assigned for it?
Yeah, I mean, for us, yeah, we knew the Dollar General. The Dollar General pulled out from away from the school because they were tired of getting ransacked every afternoon.
Like we would have specific times of the day. We'd have that would be a next special duty. Would be you're going to go sit over at the Burger King for the next 4 hours. Yeah. So that would be like overtime, on your day off. Like it would be an extra assignment that gets assigned to the shift.
But if you had an education system that taught you, that Walgreens was way more expensive because you're paying for a convenience. And that's why going to the convenience store, it's crazy to me how many people pump gas and then go into the convenience store and walk out with hordes of shit. Like, go buy that hordes of shit at the grocery store where it's like $3 cheaper for each item. You're saving yourself $12 to $15 by going to the grocery store versus buying your shit. If you buy a pack of Gatorades and a couple bags of chips, it's $8 less to buy all of that at the grocery store.
You have 8 times as much for the price that you pay for one. You get the
they don't teach you any of that shit in school. You know what I'm saying?
Math.
Or no discipline. There's no discipline there. But anyway, the whole reparations thing, and I haven't found a single poll where anybody voted for reparations.
I
No,
I don't know that
Asians didn't vote for it. Middle-aged people didn't vote for it. They weren't pro against it. Young people weren't pro reparations. Like, any poll that you look at on who's voting for reparations, nobody, the reparations has never won a single poll, except maybe low income poll. And I don't think it won that. I think even like the low income folks were like, yeah, no, I don't believe in paying reparations.
Well, because you have to understand that money has to come from somewhere. Like, if it's coming from taxes, are you going to segregate taxes?
Right. And that's the other thing with the 14th Amendment, I think, kind of like protects against all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we literally fought a war to make sure that we are one nation under God. Like, one. We're not going to pay this for this and this for this and that. Like,
where would it stop? You know what I'm saying?
It doesn't, because then you start labeling a shooter as a white supremacist.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about this white supremacist shooter. There's a lot of question and skepticism going on here. He has some fresh Nazi tattoos, some fresh SS tattoos. There's a lot of questions. Can a Mexican actually be a white supremacist? Just a lot of questions coming out of this. But I would like to point out is that, again, and I've said this in other shows, that we always care more about the mass shooter than we do the victims. And I always thought that was tragic, because we're not even trying to understand the shooters' mentalities in these cases. All we're trying to do is prove a point, a political point. And here we go, case and point, or point in case. Bring up the one article on how it was labeled for the Nashville shooter. Texas gunman social media post embraced white supremacy. Now, the same company put out a tagline. This is the same news. This is Reutters. For the Nashville school shooter, it said Nashville school shooter had emotional disorder and a small arsenal, according to police. So we know that that's not really true about the Nashville shooter. And we know that the Nashville shooter, in fact, had a manifesto that we haven't yet to see. We haven't seen that manifesto yet. We don't know what's on that manifesto. But we also know that he was anti-Christian and transgender, anti-Christian, which is a hate crime. Now, what's more hateful, going after Christians or going after Jews? What's more racist? Is it more racist if you hate, or, is it more racist to mass kill Jews or mass kill black people? What's more racist? To be anti-Jewish or to be anti-black? Is it more racist? You know what I'm saying?
I think if you go over to Germany or go to any place on earth where they've unearthed like mass graves, they just say that there's mass graves. They don't say there's mass graves and there was 13 white people and 9 black. They don't say bullshit. They just say mass graves. So if there's a mass killing of people, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. And the shooter, whoever does the shooting, they don't get a chance. At that point, they have lost any respect. They have lost any rights. They have lost anything as a human. You just decided to not only take multiple lives. You have made the decision that your life does not matter anymore. So now you're going to take other lives so you can go to prison for the rest of your life. I don't give a shit whether you're a guy, a girl, black, white, Mexican. I don't care if you hated dude. I don't care why you did whatever you did. I don't care, because it does not matter unless you're trying to push a narrative, unless you're trying to get behind, oh, we're going to ban this or oh, we're going to ban that.
Right.
Last time I checked, murder's illegal. Every state, every place on the face of the earth, if you kill someone, you'll get in trouble for it for the most part.
Yeah, the motive for this guy that made him snap was his neighbors wanting him to stop shooting in his front yard, and then he created these atrocities. Now, this guy was definitely mentally unstable, and he's a wackadoodle. But we have a lot of wackadoodles in this country. I would say this dude is just as much a wackadoodle as the trans dude. These are all people who suffer from extreme, unchecked mental illness and extreme lack of discipline. It's unchecked discipline that resorts in what we call mental illness today. It's allowing kids to grow up unparented, and then they become one of these mental health patients. This is bred into them. This is something that they weren't born with. This was something that was nurtured into them. This is poor family households. This is lack of attention from daddy and mommy. This is no attention in the school system. This is parents celebrating the worst in their children and not the best in their children. This is about parents not spending the proper amount of time with their children. This is about parents who were the cool parents and allow their kids to play video games at early ages and watch death and destruction and murder and mayhem at a very early age, who thought it was cool to allow their children to watch horror movies at an early age because it's fun and it's cute. And just allowing their whole life as a totality to go unchecked. And this unchecked behavior, it results in really crazy shit like this. That it's crazy that a Mexican who's full-blown Mexican, not even white Mexican, just full Hispanic, South American, Latino, definitely not not white. What do Latins call white people? Anglos.
Yeah.
This dude's definitely not an Anglo. This is full Mexican. He's got the Mexican mustache. He's got the Lázaro Lopez mustache going on. So in no way would this dude be accepted in the master race of Hitler. Yet he puts the symbol of Hitler's SS. He would never make it into the SS, not being that color. He would probably be the one that would be executed by said racists, by Nazis or whatever. So this guy is just mentally fucked up from the beginning, with extremely fucked up parents. I guarantee you, if you go back and you look at this kid's parents, it's probably a non-existent type of relationship with his parents. Definitely unchecked. Some people in the chats are saying gringo is what they refer. This guy is definitely not a gringo. But that stems the question, can Mexicans be racist? And the answer to that is yes.
Everybody can be racist. But if you just hate everybody, then you can't, can you be racist if you hate everybody?
But Hispanics is an ethnicity. You know what I mean? So it would just be like, you could be a white Polish person, right? You can be a white Irish person. You can be a white Mexican.
Very much so.
You can be born and raised in Mexico.
Unless it supports a narrative.
And be white.
Unless you can try to pick some stuff out let's hypothetically say that they unearth a shit ton of stuff where he is just in love with Hitler and he is just he believes he's the second coming of Hitler. So let's say that. So in his mind, he is the king of racism. He's the king of white supremacy. Do you think that he has is he meeting with other people, or is this one person that's a little crazy? Not a little crazy, a lot of crazy.
Obviously.
So once we start looking at things in a more a critical eye set and start picking apart, okay, that is a fact. Yes, the grass was in front of that building, but it has nothing to do with how many people got killed. I'd give two shits if the grass was cut or not. It's a fact in the case, yes, but it means nothing.
Right.
Once they start pulling away the facts that don't mean anything, you start looking
they're obsessed in all these articles. They're obsessed with making you hate this man. They want you to hate this man. Every single article. He was a misogynist. He was anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. He was a gun-loving, right-wing extremist. Every single article. It calls him a racist, an extremist, hates women. Everything is just geared to you making them. And great, I'm for it. We should hate this motherfucker to no end. I am all for that. But why did we not do that for the transgender mass shooter killing Christians in Nashville? That's where the disconnect lies. So we want to paint a picture of hatred towards this guy, but we don't want to paint a picture of hatred towards the other guy because he was transgendered. And that's where I think middle America is kind of like, that's where the whole separation of this far right wing, far left wing shit kind of ends, is like, hey guys, no, both of these people were pieces of shit and we shouldn't be making them look good in any way, shape, or form. Like, we should find every single low point of these people's lives and we should exploit that and make fun of it. You know, like this dude's mental illness that led him to fucking being a right-wing, full-blown Latino is just as fucking crazy as whatever mental illness and lack of parenting, lack of good parenting that led this transgender dude to be super confused and super hateful and want to go kill Christians. Like, they're both wackadoodles that suffer from the same wackadoodle shit, who chose evil over help. See, other people choose love, right? Other people, like, you know, gay people, they find themselves in love and they go and they get married and they marry the person. And that's their middle finger to the world. They don't go out and fucking shoot people. They don't go out there and fucking lay waste. They just go and get married. And that's their fuck you to society. And they live a life like everybody else. Hidden, you know, amongst people. Like, of all the gay friends that I know, I mean, the fact that I know they're gay, that's about as far as it goes. Their personal life is their personal life, just like my personal life is my personal life. But why is it that every transgender has got to throw themselves out there in some obnoxious anti-women type of view? It would be like doing blackface and being like the worst black person you could find and emulating that. That's what transvestites, you know, this is what these trans people do to these women. They find the worst type of female, the worst type of Karen, and then they reenact that in the most over the top and embellished way. It's not fair to women. It's not fair to society. And it all comes back to being a wackadoodle.
Or a group of wackadoodles. During the same time frame that this Texas shooting happened and you had the shooting in Tennessee, we had the shooting in Georgia, where the mass media has not really been pushing this. There's been little trickles of it's been coming out, but it doesn't fit a narrative.
Weren't like 19 people fucking shot?
This is one of the largest mass shootings in American history.
How many people died? Do you know?
32 people were injured, 4 of them critically.
Right. And that was a birthday party at a club.
Yeah.
And it was like a 16. It was a sweet 16. Why are you having a sweet 16 at the club? First of all, like, come on.
And why are we not talking about this? Why is this not on the front page of Reuters? Why is this not, like, when I go to search for stuff, why does this not come up?
Because there's an obvious narrative. We all know, everybody that listens to the show knows that there's an anti-police, there's an mainstream media is nothing but propaganda these days. And that's why it's so important for podcasts like Breaking Point's podcast to exist, and Tim Pool to exist, and Tucker Carlson to exist, and all these things to exist, because, you know, right now we're seeing a kind of a move, and you know, our next topic is Tucker Carlson, who has coming back to Twitter, announcing to the world that he's going after Fox News and that he's going after mainstream media. And there right now, it's really great because the pendulum has swung where there are people combating mainstream media. I just don't think Tucker Carlson's big enough to do it. And I don't think it's going to pay out well for Tucker Carlson, because they're just going to go out and try to slander him, just like they did with Joe Rogan when they saw that Joe Rogan was a threat, when people were actually listening to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was asking questions. You know, and that's the thing. Joe Rogan asks questions. He questions people of all backgrounds, the biggest Democrats, the biggest professors, the biggest Republicans, and all he does is ask them questions. And he throws no softballs to anyone, and he argues with everyone. And that's incredible. He's one of the best interviewers of our time, of our day and age. If he was a detective, he would break everybody. He would be the World Series of First 48 on the TV show. He's incredible. But as soon as mainstream media saw that he has a following and that people actually believe what he says, and he's asking the right questions that mainstream media doesn't want you to ask, they go after him over the use of the N-word, which was not inappropriate and which was not out of context in any way, shape, or form. Was it in poor form? I don't think so. I still to this day don't think so. I do understand the severity of the word, and I'm willing to play the game of not using it. That's fine. But I don't think it's the adult way to handle that situation. That's not the way I would want my kids to, it's like, I want my kids to be able to say penis and vagina when having a conversation about sexuality. I don't want to say the P word and the V word. You know what I mean? That's ignorant. You know what I mean? So if we're having an education or a learning moment about something, saying, like, if we're in court, saying that he used the N-word and told me to fuck off cracker, why are we saying N-word? Why don't we, if we're saying fucking and we're saying cracker all in the same sentence, why can't in court in an educational, that's a different debate for a different time. We'll save it for Patreon. But, I think they're going to do the same thing to Tucker Carlson. They're going to try to just dig into his past. They're going to try to come up with shit that doesn't exist. Same thing they've been doing with Trump for years and years and years with the Russian collusion and the Russian disinformation. And they're going to do what the mainstream media and the propagandists do. And that's confuse and retard everything.
Like we were talking yesterday, if you were in Tucker's position, my thought at this point, if he fears for his, like, because all these people that'll go, I'm not, because they'll make these posts like they'll say I'm not suicidal and I'm not this and I don't, like, if you've got all that,
Elon Musk did that.
If you feel, say whatever you're afraid that they're going to cap you, just get it out there.
Yeah, who was the guy that was coming out on Monday, the whistleblower that we haven't heard anything from? There was an FBI whistleblower supposed to come out with some shit on Monday, and then just, I remember you texted me like on Friday. Yeah. Oh, this FBI whistleblower is coming out with this crazy information about Joe Biden and the Obama presidency, blah, 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 blah. And I think my text back to you was like, yeah, I'll believe that when it happens. And of course, Monday came around. But even Fox News, Sean Hannity was talking about it, about this whistleblower, credible source. And it's going to just be, bombshell news, blah, 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 blah. Well, if it was going to be bombshell news and he wasn't looking for a payout, he would have came out with it on Friday.
Because they're looking for the medias. They're still looking for ratings because they're back in the day. You couldn't be able to call them out on their bullshit so fast. We live in a day and age where I can literally instantly tell you exactly what's happening halfway across the globe. Like within milliseconds, you'll know exactly what's going on. So we can start calling bullshit out almost immediately. And that's one of the biggest differences between now versus even like 20 years ago. Like when we were graduating high school, like I guarantee the same bullshit was going on back then. I guarantee in the 80s it was going on. I guarantee that because you've got the 60s, you got the JFK stuff. Like this isn't this isn't new. It's just we're able to call it out in almost real time. And that's what's new.
Yep. So
I think Tucker needs to, because like we were talking, like I don't think if he shuts up right now, he never says another word for the rest of his life, I don't think that he's going to starve. No. I think that man is set for the rest of his life. And if he comes back to life and lives another lifetime, I think he has enough wealth that he can live several lifetimes. It's like, there's nothing in it for him to put it out other than clearing his conscience. And if he's clearing his conscience, then just get it out.
Right.
But I understand like the legal part of it. And he's got to go through I understand there's some self-preservation, but if people are getting in fear for their life, or we have this joke about being Clintoned, you'd be Clinton or Epstein. Like it's a joke that you're going to be killed and they're going to make it look like a suicide. You're going to shoot yourself in the face then shoot
every
yourself.
Time you talk about it, like it just throws me back to that case last night. Like I cannot stop thinking about that case from last night.
How can you shoot yourself 3 times with a shotgun?
How can you slit your throat and then crash your motorcycle into the back of somebody and die from a motorcycle crash?
I'm just glad I don't know these people any better. That's all I can say.
It's so crazy.
I'm glad I just watch it on the internet.
It's so crazy. It's all crazy. But the good news is that Kamala is in charge of AI. We're all going to be okay. Mer 530 says the Tennessee and Las Vegas shooter, there's zero info. But this guy, we have everything in a day. That's true. Like we know what Russian sites he was visiting. We know what social media he was posting. We know we know the whole timeline of events, what set him off, who he killed, blah, 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 blah. We know all of it. But you're right. The Las Vegas shooter, the Nashville shooter. We know nothing about any of this. No manifesto. What's the motive? We can guess, we can speculate, but you're right. It's not like this case where they just spell it all out. I'm going to end it today on something that I think is extremely hilarious, which is this is coming from the New York Post, giant penis mowed into the lawn at King Charles's coronation bash site. This may rub royalists the wrong way. Cocky pranksters mowed a giant penis onto the famous grounds of the Royal Crescent in Bath, England, where a significant coronation party is set to be thrown in just 2 days. Residents awoke Thursday to morning wood. Whoever wrote this is a genius. With the glaringly obvious penis trimmed into the lush grass overnight. It's unclear if law enforcement is handling the case. Fancy homes that date to the 18th century from a crescent on this street, known worldwide for having perfect lawns. And that is one massive cock. Beautiful drawn cock. But it looks to be a circumcised cock. Again, all the cocks that everybody draws from around the world are always a circumcised cock. Tell me why. Celebrate the 300th anniversary of the Georgian era. A flyer for the Royal Crescent event reads, decorate your own regal crown, watch demonstrations on royal fashion, and visit the Georgian cooking up delicious recipes in the kitchen. It's unclear how many royal fans are coming to the bash to celebrate the official transfer of power to Charles, 74 years old, after the September death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth. She had reigned for over 70 years when she died at 96, according to this article. The ceremony will be star-studded, featuring performers from Lionel Richie, Katy Perry, and Andrea Bocelli. First Lady Jill Biden is also expected to attend. We know Joe couldn't make that trip. That's way too much going on for that dude. But how did somebody get onto that lawn to draw a dick?
Not only that, those are very perfectly round nuts. The shaft is perfectly spaced.
Oh, and the straightest of lines.
They are parallel. It almost seems like it was done with a drone. Like a laser? That or a robot that you can drive out there, and so it keeps its. I don't know.
Oh,
that looks very
like one of those Roomba lawnmowers, but because you're right. Those lines look extremely sharp, almost perfect.
How many dicks have you seen drawn in shacks in country?
Oh, thousands.
How many of them were perfectly straight?
None. I mean, none. But that jet, remember when that jet, do we have pictures from that when that jet drew a dick over San Diego?
I could pull it.
I wonder how straight that dick was. And if you could set the GPS in a jet to even do that, or if he's just that skilled.
So the thing with the GPS is.
That's not perfect. That's not perfect at all. It's a great dick to be drawn with a jet, but not perfect at all. There's the GPS dick that a boat drew. None of these are perfect dicks. That one on the lawn, though, is a perfect symmetrical cock. Very nice. Very well done. Those balls are, full. Those look like they're ready to bust at any moment as an erect shaft, circumcised shaft. And the hole is, man.
If I'm making a criticism, it's not centered with the building.
Go back and let me see that. We don't know that because maybe the picture is off centered of the building.
Well,
maybe we don't know what the center of the building is.
Well, the picture is centered with the shaft, and the shaft should be towards the center of the building.
No, that picture is kind of canted. Like if I cant my shoulders, the camera's canted. I'm not sure yet because the camera is like this. Does that make sense? It's like this.
Yeah, like a little angle to it.
Got a little angle to it. If they were to straighten that out, I'm not thoroughly convinced that it's not. Maybe this is of alien proportion. Maybe this is of pyramid proportion that we don't even realize how perfect. Maybe that penis is, maybe it is off-centered of the building, but it's pointing perfectly due north, magnetic north to the North Pole, aligning perfectly with the Little Dipper. That's a sign of something bigger than us that we don't even know about. This dick could represent so much more. And the fact that nobody saw it happen.
That's the other
huge
thing.
That thing's the size of a football field.
you got like I just go back to thinking how many kids in Afghanistan are going to find some dick drawing in some cave or in some shack that some Marines that were like, we're going to go back and they're going to think that that was hieroglyphics. What if
I mean, listen, when we took over a palace at the very early days of the Afghan war, and there was a fighting position inside of the palace, a sandbag fighting position used by the Taliban. And once we took the palace and made our way through it and looked around in the sandbag, behind the sandbag, so the sandbags were in front of a wall, so they were between a wall and the sandbags as cover. And on the wall, drawn in it probably looks like they took the tip of a bullet to carve it into the concrete walls of the palace, but they drew the Twin Towers, but the Twin Towers were penises, and a penis airplane was crashing into the penis Twin Towers, and the people falling out of the Twin Towers of the explosion were little penises. And that was drawn by the Taliban.
Penis drawings.
So all cultures do this. It's not just American cultures.
So you think alien? If I was an alien, I'd be drawing dicks on a new planet.
Right? Why not?
I mean,
we need to put a picture of that up on our Last Call Instagram page. If you guys aren't following the Last Call Instagram page, this is where we put up all the images from the show, and images that kind of lead into what the next show is going to be. Lots of fun content there. But yes, this is not a crop circle. This is a cock circle. Cock circle drawn by aliens. Anyway, guys, listen, if you really want to follow the show, Breaking Points podcast, it's I think they have over 1 million subscribers on YouTube now. They're one of the biggest non-mainstream media news outlets. I love what they are doing to mainstream media. I don't always agree with what they're saying. Most of the time they are left. They did bring on a female who is very right so that they could balance things out a little bit. Appreciate that. But I think their views on Uvalde are a little bit misinformed. And I think these are the type of people who would listen to an informed opinion about things like Uvalde or other police dealings and tactics. And as smart as their show is, I'd love to have a shot at helping them break down one of these cases, or having Drew Breezy break down one of these cases from real law enforcement perspective, who aren't trying to be political politicians, who aren't trying to be anything other than a voice for police officers, and to come out with a real perspective of what a good officer sees or doesn't see. So if you could go some way or another, guys, do us a favor and go to Breaking Points, listen to their podcast, but leave them a rating and review and tell them that they should get the Failure to Stop guys' point of view on Uvalde or any kind of other police thing, because I think if they see our name pop up enough, maybe they'll come on our show. I don't even care if we go on their show in front of their audience. I want them to come on our show because I respect them and I love what they do, and I'd love to have that conversation with them. So if you're still in these live chats, if you still carried on to the very end of this show, which was brought to you by ghostbed.com/Wolfpack, please do go the extra mile for us and do that. Also, check out, we got a lot of stuff coming. We'll be into the new studio by Monday, and so I will be then putting out lots of content to that Patreon. My wife will be delivering some content. Last Row Lopez and I have a show going out called the Last Row Wine Show on Patreon. Lots of other stuff, and of course continued our 5 shows a week that are free for first responders and to the public everywhere. Also remember, if you become a paid member via YouTube or Patreon, you're also going to get digital copies of my book. Depending on your membership, you might even get some signed autographed pictures. You might get a signed autographed copy of the book for your $10 members, and just some things like that. There's going to be a lot of room for extra curricular things as we grow. There's going to be a lot of other bonus to feed. But right now, your money's going towards all new equipment. We have reinvested every single dime that you guys have provided us in the last 3 months since we started the Patreon. And again, we are putting that all into it to have even better content. And as soon as I get in there, the graphics, the lighting, all the content is just going to get better and better. And so we really appreciate you guys. Until next time, for myself and Josh from Dead Like Media, guns up and giddy up.